I'm trying to think of ways to describe my work. It's not easy. It's weird, isn't it? Making your own work is personal. Um, the maze kind of grew out of other paintings I did, where I'd use maze as a texture in a painting, in a landscape or whatever. I'd kind of interested in sort of microbiology and cells and go together to make bigger events, people, animals, whatever. And sort of over the last 8 to 10 years, the focus has kind of moved to the maze being the subject, like a vehicle, and colour and composition and become sort of the tools I use. There are so many kind of aspects about the process and about the image that I like, that I relate to. Kind of way of problem solving and mapping and kind of looking for solutions or dissecting events, and it kind of has that diagram element to it. And I kind of make work on a theme. Like I have an idea whether I let people know what that idea is or not. But I kind of have an idea when I make a painting about what the painting's about. And I don't try and make a painting to sort of represent it. I just kind of make the painting thinking about it and kind of filter myself into the painting and kind of think that in some way transmits the meaning. And I don't think it has to transmit the exact meaning. You know, when you put the work together, when you see it in a show, you can see personalities. The way they're made is like a formula. So the grey and the blue are underpainting. They're the sort of the drawing, and the colours kind of that you add, and the lines, and they kind of start creating the narrative, and you sort of have this discussion while you're making it with yourself and the painting. And there's a tension, there's a nervousness, there's a sense of relief, there's a sense of excitement, all the things that you kind of, well, in this case that I'm talking about, that I'm trying to sort of make into the narrative of the painting, they're kind of there through the process of making the painting. So whether the actual final outcome represents the meaning or the purpose or the intention kind of doesn't matter. It's kind of, the outcome is the outcome, but the process and the conversation you have and that physicality of making the work are kind of the important things. Reflecting on the ideas behind the work as you're making them. That's kind of, as far as that's the things that hold value for me as the artist, not so much the outcome, which is weird, isn't it? Because the outcome at the end of the day is the most important thing. It's the thing that you're after, what you're trying to achieve, but it isn't. So it's that sort of, there's, and that sort of awkwardness is reflected, in the composition. It's looking at this area here where this dark green, almost black, is going to, when I do this line, is going to touch this one, and you get that crampedness, and then you have all this space here. And life's like that. Sometimes things are, especially in my life, things are cramped and awkward, and sometimes things are sort of easy and carefree. So it's about, I suppose the work's about recording, or trying to record, how I feel about the world I see and the way I live it. I mean, yeah, something like that. I'll edit this a lot. It's about having fun as well. If you enjoy painting, enjoy painting. It doesn't have to just be painting. I know I'm not speaking to painters, and I don't just make paintings, but the ideas behind all my work are sort of same or similar. Very limited. One of the key elements I like about making my paintings is I kind of find the process quite meditative, sort of the idea of painting a controlled straight line, fairly controlled, requires me to sort of almost have breathing exercises. So if I get all tense and hepped up, it kind of affects the work. You have to just stay calm, concentrate on your breathing. It's kind of it's a good release, good way to de-stress. When I was preparing for the show at the Central Library, which I suppose I should talk about more, I realised my palette, unknowingly to myself, was heavily influenced by 1970s wallpaper. Some of the colours are a little garish. One of the key points that I wanted to mention was collaborating with other artists. It's not something that I've done a lot of until recently, but the benefits I found really, really beneficial. One of the sort of bobber job commissions I've had was working with a chap called Dom Heffer, building a satellite dish, or a mock satellite dish called Nigel. And the idea was he was doing a project about communication with primary school children around Hull, and they were working on little 20 centimetre square canvases, and these made up panels that attached to the satellite dish. And when someone commissions you to build something to the scale they want, it sort of frees you up, you do it, you know. And it kind of inspired me. Chair that I did with Creative Connections at ArtLink, the scale of that was kind of a direct result of working with Dom. And then that's kind of fed into the bricks that I've made, the sculpture bricks that are presently on show for a long time at the Central Library. I might have the longest running show ever at the Central Library Gallery. Could go on for years, but hopefully not. So yeah, collaborating with artists. So the work that I've done with Mal Williamson, Mal used to run Creator College in town, you know, and collaborating with Mal and seeing him be, I mean, he's a filmmaker, so I worked with him on film projects and teaching at Creator College and the Prince's Trust, but also kind of getting that insight into the commercial world of the arts. It's so much more beneficial to work with people that have done it, and you sort of learn from them than trying to work it out for yourself, really. It's actually really hard to do in the art world, you know, to find someone you work with or you can collaborate with or even just share studio space with that you get on with. So if you find someone like that, hold on to it. Meeting other people with the same intentions, well, not, you know, not exactly the same, but you kind of builds like that sort of sense of community in the art world locally. It just makes you feel less alone, less isolated. You sort of make good friends, and it all becomes, you know, an exhibition isn't just about going to see the work, it's about, you know, getting together and kind of celebrating each other's achievements. It's great. And I think that's one of the key kind of bits of advice as an artist, is to sort of seek out opportunity. Hull is a great place to make, because it's a cheap place to live, loads of facilities, old warehouses for artists to kind of, you know, places like Ground, ArtLink, Humber Street. But it's not like it's not a great place to access those opportunities, say, somewhere as obvious as London, Leeds, Manchester, Liverpool. You know, so a key thing, one that I'm sort of guilty of not doing myself, would be to sort of, you know, use Hull to make work, but then get your work out of the city, which is kind of like, it's what I'm trying to do now. That kind of realisation after all these years that, you know, you need to enter these competitions, you need to travel with your work. But another thing I wanted to do this year was to have an exhibition in Bristol, because being from Bristol, you know, having family in Bristol, but never exhibiting in Bristol. So, you know, just set yourself goals, keep an open mind, stay ambitious, take advantage of opportunities. I think opportunity is a great word, you know, because what you find as an artist is people want to utilise your skills, but they don't want to pay you decent rate. If it's something that provides you an opportunity, even if it's just materials, as long as you get something out of it, I'd say do it. There's no substitute for experience. And especially things like certificates, health and safety, DBS, anything useful. I used to work for social services in children's homes as a relief care officer. And one of the things I sort of found really interesting and still kind of relate to, especially teaching at whole youth justice services I do, was some training called crisis therapeutic intervention, which has a really interesting circle of how situations explode, from seemingly nothing. But just life really. Anything that gives you life experience. Being an artist, you're kind of a filter for everything you do. Everything you see and hear kind of gets filtered through. And that's kind of like what my work is kind of fundamentally about. It's kind of filtering things through this maze. I don't know why I'm doing this. Filtering things through the maze to try and kind of just focus on the important bits. Focus on the story I want to tell. Use the maze as a framework to hang a narrative on, the feelings through colour, contrast, mark making. There are so many different aspects to art and so many artists doing so much work that it's quite easy to kind of feel lost. It's not a profession I'd recommend you go into unless you're well connected. I think that sort of hierarchy of the greater and the good, and that does exist. It's quite hard in terms of social mobility to kind of get into that world if you come from a working class environment like I do. And the fine art world isn't very working class. It's the same with anything, isn't it? Yeah, opportunity is a key thing. Take all the opportunities, but don't do it for now. Do it for the experience, do it for materials, do it for a certificate, and if you can, do it for money. Because it tastes better. You can't eat certificates. One of the things I suppose I've been successful at, having graduated in 2000, is to keep practicing for 20 years. And I can't decide if it's kind of stubbornness, or not laziness, but a reluctance to get a proper job. Oh no, that's not true. I've had a proper job. I always think it's this idea of you set your stall out to what you want to achieve and what you want to do and the price you're willing to pay. I kind of earn my money mostly through teaching and gallery technician work. I'm self-employed. I've been self-employed for nearly 4 years. So all these skills have come from being an artist, so like I said before about taking opportunities, things like picture framing my dad taught me. The technician work, it's sort of come on from being good with tools, having friends that do it, being involved with CAG and the gallery there. So for a number of years at the CAG gallery on Humber Street, I was heavily involved in hanging exhibitions and just great experiences like that. Organisations like CAG, Kingston Art Group, Humber Street Gallery, working there, it gives you an insight to, gives you a peek behind the curtain. You get to see these kind of more famous artists, their work, and you kind of see how it's installed, and you get to look behind the curtain, and it kind of takes away some of the gloss, and you can sort of see that, your work isn't a million miles away from their work. They're probably better at publicity and funding, writing and applications, and more productive and doing that side of the art world that I'm not into. I always kind of saw myself as kind of like a working class painter, someone who just sort of threw himself into the coalface, thought that if I spent hours and hours daily painting, that finally, somehow someone would come along and buy my work and I'd live happily ever after.